It's time to get what you want with a bold approach. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. This is where ordinary entrepreneurs come for inspiration and education to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes until the job gets done. Look, when I made the leap from corporate America to running my own business, I had a wife, 5 kids, a mortgage, and they all wanted to eat and sleep in warm beds. I didn't have the luxury of hitting rock bottom while I found myself on my buddy's couch or in somebody's basement or going back home, so mommy could dry my eyes, pat my back, and tell me everything is going to be okay while I find myself. Oh no. I had to put food on the table, a lot of food on the table, every single day, every week, every month. This is the no hype, cut to the chase material, ideas, and training I wish I had when I started down my entrepreneurial journey. This is one of the premier sales, marketing, and entrepreneurial programs available, and it's free. Make sure to stay up to date on everything I'm working on, along with additional content I don't have time to share on the podcast, by signing up for the Weekly Whisper at weeklywhisper.com. If you're curious about where to start when it comes to taking control of your sales and marketing is just selling in print, you can get my sales agenda to use in your everyday sales life at thesalesagenda.com. Finally, get the on-demand help you need to grow your sales at 30daysalesgrowth.com. Enter the promo code podcast to save a few bucks on your order. If you have any questions on ways I might be able to help you here with my team at The Sales Whisperer, feel free to email me, Wes at thesaleswhisperer.com. That is my actual email address, and I read everything that is not stupid, spammy, or ridiculous. Now on to the show. Dave Lakhani, welcome to the Sales Podcast, man. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here today.
Thanks for being a guinea pig. Like I told you last week, this is the first one I'm using. I've always used a video just to see the other person, but never used it afterwards. So you'll be the first one going up on YouTube, man. So
I'm sorry, man. I got a face made for radio.
Oh, man. I hear you, but I got some filters, and
good,
I got
good.
a good graphics
Excellent.
Guy. And
Excellent. See what you can do about my hair.
You're going to love yourself.
Yeah, good.
So this is a classic example of hanging out with good people. You know, we both have some mutual friends. Justin was kind of talking about some things, and he introduced us. And, you know, I've just learned to just be quiet in these cool groups, because they'll eventually, if I talk too much, they'll figure out I don't belong. So, you know, I just listen and observe. And he mentioned you. And so we chatted briefly last week. I pulled up your stuff. Good grief. Let's get into you. I can't, 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted 4 books, but then I can't count past that. So maybe, I don't know, you got a lot of books. You got a storied history. So can you give us a little snapshot about who you are and how you came to be?
Sure. So, you know, I've been studying persuasion, and I'm best known as an applied persuasionist. So I've been studying persuasion since I was 16 years old, so a little over 30 years now, about 34 years. And I started studying persuasion for a reason that's probably different than most people. I was raised in a religious cult. So from the time I was 6 until I was 16 years old, I was raised in a cult. They're called Branhamites. They believed in an end-time prophet named William Branham. They believed he was the literal resurrection of the prophet Elijah from the Bible. There was no education past 6th or 7th grade. Women had to be subservient to their husbands, or corporal punishment was allowed. There was no television, no radio, no going to the movies, no dancing, no marrying outside of the organization. You had to marry inside the organization. And there was a whole lot of fire and brimstone preaching. And by the time I was 11 or 12 years old, I'd sort of figured out, like, I'm pretty sure we don't have the exclusive, bat line to Jesus, right, and something's wrong here. And so the problem with it is, though, when you're that young, obviously, is that you have a lot of questions. But in organizations like that, they don't want a lot of questions. So my only way of pushing back was to refuse to leave school. And so, they were just banking on the fact that this 12-year-old boy, you get an option to get out of school for the rest of your life, and you hit the jackpot, right? But that wasn't the case for me. I wanted to be in school. I liked school, and I liked learning. And so every time they told me I had to get out, I would say, that's great. I've got to go to school and get my stuff, and then I'll just let my principal know why I'm leaving. And I started to see that they didn't really like that. You know, they didn't want me to.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yep.
I think your microphone might be rubbing your collar.
Oh, is it making noise?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. So, they really didn't like that. So I just simply would, they would say, okay, well, let's not do that. Let's think about it for a little while. And they kept banking on the fact that I was going to one day wake up and say enough. And I didn't. So by the time I was 16 years old, they realized the way to get me out was to put more pressure on my family. My brother had ADHD. He's younger than me. And that meant he was possessed by the devil, literally. And so the best way to get devils out of people is to beat the hell out of them. And
Wow.
So that was our several times a week sort of experience. And by the time I was 16, I was getting in physical fights with the deacons and other people in the church because they were beating my brother. I was hiding him, trying to keep him from that. So I realized I had to go, or they were going to really just put too much pressure on my family. And so I packed up everything I owned and put it in the back of a 1970 Ford Falcon I'd bought from the Forest Service. And I drove to church one more time. I walked up to church and went to the front of the church, and they laid their hands on me and prayed to God that He'd turn my soul over to Satan for the destruction of my flesh, that I'd be killed for my transgressions. And
So you went there voluntarily to have them put a curse on you?
yeah, I had to go one more time. That was part of the deal with my mom and everybody. So I said, whatever. At this point, I don't really care. And so I went, and they did that, and then I was on my own. And when I left, I was excommunicated not only from the church but my family too. They weren't allowed to talk to me or me to them, and so I was on my own, 16 years old, and I went to the only place they had never told me that I couldn't go, and that was the library. The library had been this sort of refuge for me all this time. My mom would take us on Saturdays. We could check out as many books as we wanted, and my mom was an educated woman, and she didn't really care what we checked out books on. So she'd let us. I checked out everything. I actually got an award when I was in high school for having checked out more books out of the Carnegie Public Library in Caldwell, Idaho, than anybody else. So, so that was my starting point, and I started studying everything I could get my hands on. I started studying persuasion, influence. I started studying the heuristics of decision making, the psychology of belief. I began studying everything I could about salesmanship, marketing, advertising, public relations, because I had to figure out some way to understand how my mom had made this crazy decision to raise me and my two younger brothers in this place.
Right.
And that started that study. And I didn't think it would really go anywhere. I was just looking for a simple answer, which I ultimately found. Well, it's quite as simple, but I did find the answer of why she did it and why a lot of people make these decisions. And then I continued on with my life, went into the military, did a lot of different things, but I ultimately kept coming back to persuasion and salesmanship and marketing. And then I started realizing I could actually make a living selling things and doing, helping people sell more of their things. And so that became my passion and my career for quite some time, even though I was buying and selling other businesses by then and starting companies. And so I've owned about 20 different businesses in the last 25 years. Either bought and sold them, done a lot of turnarounds for small, mid-sized companies in that $3 to $100 million range, taken two companies to the Inc. 500 list, and have continued to be entrepreneurial and focus on that. But the core of everything that I do is really based on that simple idea of applied persuasion.
Okay, so this is going to turn into an 87-part series, so I'm going to need you to block some time out on your calendar.
Yeah.
All right, so something I did not envision talking about, but I can see people in business getting stuck or getting the wool pulled over their eyes, for lack of a better term, and
Sure.
thinking they got to stay in there. So kind of like people in that religion you were brought up with, or that
Right.
cult, right? They're like, I can't leave this. Even if they get an inkling that this may not be quite right, they're afraid to pursue that any farther. So can you talk about how that happens in business and how to break free of that? Because, we live in this free society, right? Like you mentioned, libraries are free. This podcast is free. Blogs are free. You can get, 27 PhDs, the equivalent for free just by studying. But people, they go back to the fantasy football and their bowling league. And how can they take what you learned there and break free?
Well, the interesting part about it is that if you, when it's done properly, you can, that going back to the fantasy football league and doing all of those things that you normally do,
right?
It's still, is that still making noise?
Just if you don't pull it away, it kind of rubs.
Yeah, it's okay. It might be my face, actually.
Just go shirtless, man. We're going to be the first ever Chippendale podcast.
That's it. Hey, dude, you know what? You'll be number one on something.
On the FBI most wanted,
exactly.
FTC
exactly.
most wanted list.
So, so the thing about it is that when persuasion is done properly, that's what it really does. It causes people to just sort of feel comfortable and make these decisions and not think about anything else, right? They think, okay, this is the way I need to be. Everything is good. So persuasion is a very powerful tool in that, but the way you break free of those kinds of things, which happens quite often. So either, a couple of things happen. People get their identity tied up into whatever it is that they're doing. And you're not your business, you're not your car, you're not your house, you're not any of those things. Identity and those things are different, although it's very easy for them to become attached, right? So if you start thinking that, people value me because I have these things, or because my business is this, and if my business fails, or if I leave this business, or if I don't do these things, that people will then judge me differently. And quite frankly, there probably are some who will. But the reality of it is the people who matter and the people who really know you aren't going to judge you that way, right? They're just going to simply do what it is that they've always done. They're going to care about you. They're going to like you. They may have empathy for whatever's happened to you, but they're going to continue on. But so the way you get out of these things is simply to have a really hard conversation with yourself and ask yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen here? If I leave and if everybody hates me, is that everybody? Is that my wife? Is that my kids? Is that my family? Are they going to abandon me too if I do this? And the chances are very high that the answer is absolutely not. Neither are your close friends. And so what you really have to think about is this the worst thing? The Stoics had a really good idea. Stoic philosophy is started back with the Greeks many, many, many years ago. And the Stoics had this idea that, is this the worst thing? So they would often practice putting themselves in the position of the worst thing. They would put themselves in the position of a beggar, or they would put themselves in the position of somebody of a lower caste, and they would act like that person and see what that's like, so that they weren't afraid of those things. They become immune to them. And the reality of it is that we all have to do that as business people too. We simply have to say, what's the worst thing that could happen? Is that the worst thing in the world? And is this because the long-term effect, really, of staying in a business too long, or staying in a cult too long, or staying in any sort of situation too long, is that it's ultimately devastating in ways that are much more harmful than whatever sort of psychic impact you take from that initial embarrassment or discomfort or whatever. And the second part of this, though, and this is the interesting part about it, there's always a grief event that follows this, right? And people who are in business and who often struggle in business, or have started 2 or 3 businesses, are still in grief over 1 or 2 businesses that they had before. And they've never finished that process. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Processes heal all wounds. And so they've got to go through that process of grieving, closing that grief, and then moving on. You have to replace it with something else. Or if you don't replace it with the next thing, something that you can get engaged in and start building a foundation, and again, you'll fall back into the trap. You'll go back to whatever it is you're doing, or you'll never leave.
I love that. Process is not time, heal all wounds. But can somebody do this on their own? Or is that where coaches or counselors or somebody comes in? Because, I know some people can do it on their own. Sometimes you just get hit over the head and you figure it out. But do you think that's kind of the exception, not the rule, and maybe that people should look for outsiders to help?
Yeah, people often do need somebody else to give them another perspective, because when your identity is tied up in something and you're saying, I am this thing is me, and as a result of that, this thing is going to happen, or it has happened because I made this decision, you sometimes need another perspective. You need people to ask you hard questions, or you need to go through the process if you're going to do it on your own. There's a really great book called The Grief Recovery Handbook. And what they describe grief as is not just, death or divorce or losing a pet or something like that. They describe grief as any incomplete emotional communication. And if you think about it in those terms, that grief is any incomplete emotional communication, and you think about all the times in your life that you've had these incomplete emotional communications around a lost big opportunity, or a closed business, or a partnership that didn't work out, or whatever, you need some process for completing that. And that book, for $12.95, the Grief Recovery Handbook, is probably the best place you can start. You read the first 57 pages, go through that work, and that's going to put you 80% of the way. And then you start looking at it and say, okay, what skill sets do I really need? Where do I need the help at? And you can move forward from there. So those are the kinds of things that people need to do. But the really big thing, again, is you have to at some point have an honest conversation with yourself in the mirror. I had to have that, come to Jesus meeting, if you will, with myself when I was 16 years old and say, what is the very worst thing that could happen? Well, for me, the worst thing that could happen is they could be right, I could be wrong, I could end up dying, going to hell, living in an eternal lake of fire, tormented, which didn't seem that much worse to me than where I was at the time.
Yeah.
So it was really, when you look at it like that, you say, okay, well, then I just need to get on with getting on. Right. And you do have to take those next steps. And the other thing, too, is everybody has to be a little bit resilient and gritty. You have to just, once you make these decisions, you have to just go forward. And you have to slug it out every day. You have to take the next step, put one foot in front of the other, get up and do it anyway. And you may have to do something different than you've always done to get a result you never got. And that may not always be comfortable, but you have to do it anyway. And the interesting thing is your identity then begins to shift from one of my things are who I am to I am who I am. And right. This idea that I'm resilient and I have the drive and the grit and the ability to compel myself forward becomes something that you value more than anything else, and that people value you for too. And what you realize very quickly is everybody wants that, everybody needs that, and as soon as you demonstrate it, they begin to look to you as that thought leader.
Right. There's a lot of things I want to get into, but I made a note here, and I've brought this up many times in other interviews and just in my training, but can you talk about persuasion versus manipulation? Because sure. I know even I had problems in the beginning not wanting to learn little tricks or gimmicks or whatever, like to put too much pressure on somebody, but there is a difference, right?
There's definitely a difference,
and can you
depending on who you ask. Yeah.
Right.
So when I was researching my books, I had a lot of conversations with everyone from psychologists to attorneys to negotiators about manipulation versus persuasion. If you take the literal definition of manipulation, any attempt to change someone's mind is manipulation. So if you're trying to get them to buy Coke instead of Pepsi, you're manipulating people if you want to take it in the strictest term, which is why people like attorneys have a hard time seeing the difference. They see them as being the same, right? If you're persuading someone, if you're manipulating them, they both have the same outcome. It's the same thing. But at the end of the day, my version of persuasion is this. We're simply trying to help people come to their own most logical conclusion, which happens to be one you share. But the difference we all know what it feels like to be manipulated, right? We've all been in one of those positions where somebody's taken advantage of us. It sucks. It never feels good, and you never forget it. But we all know when we're doing that, when we're lying, when we're trying to get people to make a decision that's really only in our best interest. And that's what manipulation really is. It's trying to get people to take some action that's not in their best interest, that's only in the best interest of the manipulator through any means necessary to cause them to take that action, right? So that's the big difference. So when marketers, this happens all the time. Like I've been very outspoken in the internet marketing community, for example, about people who inflate their numbers or who, come out and say, I made all of this money, but they have no proof about it. Or if you don't do this, this thing will happen to you. Or they sell something that stopped working 6 months ago for them because it's not working for them now. So now we'll turn it into a product. So I've gotten, I've absolutely, destroyed some friendships and gotten off stages and things like that because I just said, look, I'm not willing to be that person, nor am I willing to associate with those people. And the result of that is manipulation when they do it, and it happens all too often in marketing. If we take studies and we spin them enough to make them look like they actually support what we do based on the fact that we know people will not critically think or logically think, then the result is we're manipulating because we're trying to get an outcome that only suits us. We know the outcome for the person probably is not going to be the outcome that they hope for when they buy it. And so, I used to, when people, I used to have a friend who would say something like, anybody that he wanted to leverage their credibility for, whether he knew them or not, he would say, Wes, a man I'd like to call my friend. Now, that sounds completely innocuous, right? He's a guy I'd like to call my friend. But what does that really mean? It means I know you, and I'd like to call you my friend. But I don't know what you would say, but we know each other, right?
Right.
So, if I say President Obama, a man I'd like to call friend, is blah, 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 the implication is that President Obama is, I at least know him, and we have some relationship. So those kind of things, people will do that, and they'll say, well, it's just language. It's the way people hear it. But it's not.
Right.
It's the way people take it in and internalize it. And it also is based on your intention, right? Your intention is to get me to believe that you know this person or that I know this person, not to just say, you know what, I don't know President Obama, but if I did, I would think that. That's a totally different thing, right? Because then that causes people to be more objective in their thinking.
Right. So how can the average entrepreneur, business owner, corporate salesperson out there slugging away that needs to grow their sales, and they all do, right? And usually they learn that after the fact when they're laid in like, whoa, being the best computer programmer is not how I grow my business. I need to get into sales and marketing. What can they do to be more persuasive but not feel like they're that pushy, cheesy sales guy, right? Because I think everybody quits too soon because they don't want to be perceived as pushy. Even I have never been accused of being a pushy, cheesy sales guy, right? Even I break it off too soon sometimes, So how can they be more persuasive, and nudge somebody or pull them towards that sale that they need to do for their own good?
Well, the most important thing they can do is think about building a relationship, create a drip campaign. And the number one thing, though, is if you're not using some kind of a CRM package right now, whether it's something as simple as, Insightly or Pipedrive, or even if you're using something like Salesforce.com, you have to have some means of collecting data and being able to then systematically follow up with those people. So that's if you're doing more traditional sales. You can use HubSpot, you can use whatever you want, but you have to have a system and an ability to know at what level you're affecting these people. So are you doing it on a weekly basis? Are you doing it on a monthly basis? And you need to hit them from multiple different directions, right? Because if you just call somebody every day and you leave a message every day, you may get a phone call back from them eventually, and you may just annoy them to death and they'll never take your call. But if you send them an email, you drop them a phone call, if you send a letter in the mail, if you send them some lumpy mail that has something in it, if you send an article to them that, it initiates the law of reciprocation because I thought about you specifically and I sent you this article and now you feel like, oh, I should probably give Dave a call back because he took the time to think about me. He's actually doing something other people don't. Those are the kind of things that get people to respond to you and interact with you. The best thing you can do, honestly, and I don't want to pimp my book too much, but if you grab my book, How to Sell When Nobody's Buying, and you read chapter 0 of that book, you don't even have to buy it. Just go to Barnes & Noble and read it. And it will tell you.
Buy the book, people.
It'll tell you exactly what you need to do on a systematic basis to get these people to buy from you. But the mistake that salespeople make nearly always is their CRM system is sticky notes or a yellow pad. And the problem with that is that you can never find them. You don't know what the last thing you did was. You're not being systematic. And if you're not doing those things, you're not going to follow. You're not going to get people to respond to you. Today, when we're more deluged, with information than we've ever been before, if you don't get back to people enough, something else is going to capture their attention for sure. And it's not because they even have a lack of desire to respond to you or that they don't like what you have to sell. It's simply the fact that they meant to do it and then squirrel. And there they go. And so they just run off after something else. So it's your responsibility as a salesperson to gently and persistently remind them until they say no. And if they say no, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But if they don't, then you just keep going until they do. And, don't stop. Look at all the other ways that you can get to them too. Go to the mixers, find out who else knows them, leverage LinkedIn. Like I can't tell you how many people don't leverage LinkedIn properly. I've got 4,000 or 5,000 connections on LinkedIn. I could reach anybody in the world at this point on LinkedIn probably. And I often do. Like I'll look through there and I'll say, who knows this person? Then I'll go out and I'll talk to them and I'll say, I'm interested in meeting this person. I'd love for you to introduce me, but here's why. Let me explain to you first why I'm trying to meet them, what I'm trying to accomplish, and let me know based on your experience if that's a good fit or not. And if it's not, then please don't introduce me because I don't want you to introduce me to someone just for the purpose of introducing me, right? I want you to do it because you feel like you're giving them value too.
Right.
So it's that follow-up and follow-through that people make. But the biggest mistake, honestly, I can't even tell you. Like if I said CRM 100 more times, it would not be enough because so many people aren't using a system.
Right. No, I don't want to take away from your expertise and your mastery, but I think I know how you'll answer this based on what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
But because I do a lot of writing for people, they'll come to me and I'll create their sequences and whatnot, and I'll write their white papers, their free reports, their lead magnets, and I have to prep them ahead of time that it is not War and Peace. We do not have to create a master's or a PhD, dissertation. That we need a simple, an elegant, and effective lead magnet, but the money is in the follow-up.
Right.
Most people won't even read the entire report, even if it's just 4 pages, including a title page, an About Us page, and a table of contents and a lot of pictures. Right. And even the follow-ups are very simple, and so, I mean, would you agree? I mean, you don't... Even I know, and I want to get into some of your mastery on persuasion and NLP and everything else, but would you say that's the 10%, kind of the cream or the icing on the cake, and it's the simple, the basics, the blocking and tackling that makes the sale?
It is. It's doing the things that you have to do on a consistent enough basis to get the sale made. And there's two trains of thought about it, right? You can create really deep, long content, and people may spend more time with that, or you can create bite-sized sort of content that will ultimately help people just kind of get through it till they get to that point where they want something deeper, where they're going to have a conversation with you, or where they're going to take the time to dig in deeper, however they do that, right? Whether it's to read more, look at your website more, watch videos, whatever it is. But you need to compel people in the ways that they consume information now. So whether it's video, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a small top 10 list, whatever it is, you definitely need to be giving people that kind of information when you're trying to capture their attention. And then once you've captured their attention, it's the persuasiveness that causes them to then take the next step. So there's many things you can do, keys that you can use, not only that are persuasive to capture their attention, but then to drive them forward into whatever it is that you want them to do next. So
do people need to study persuasion, or do they just need to be honest, enthusiastic, transparent, and things will take care of itself?
Well, yes and no. So the challenge with not studying persuasion is that all of your competition is, right? So they're doing a much better job of creating psychological responses in their, they're doing a better job of creating psychological responses in their buyers than you are. Okay. And so if you're not taking the time to ultimately do the same thing, right? If you're not taking the time to know why you get a response for a particular thing or how to move somebody in a certain direction. So when people are, when they feel strongly both ways, how do they ever make a decision, right? You've got to be able to push them off the fence. This is a big key that salespeople forget and marketers forget or don't even know, and it's that only polarized people buy things, right? You're not going to sell to anybody who's riding the rail. Only polarized people buy things. So if you're not going to take the time to then get them off the fence, you're going to spend all of your time just chasing people who are never going to buy from you because they can't make a decision, or they're going to run into somebody who really understands how to leverage their psychology, and then they're going to go another direction, and they're going to go far down that path because it's easy. So it's important to be transparent. It's important to be honest. Those should be just baselines, right? That's just a given. But then understanding when people are confused, when they're overwhelmed with information, when they're stuck, they don't know what to do, that you do need to leverage their psychology in order to get them to take the actions that you need them to take.
So do you think people need more information or less information and more hand-holding or comforting, if you will?
Mostly they need more correct information. Because what people are objecting to today is, because it's on the internet, it's true. And so what they're really objecting to is...
Abraham Lincoln said that.
That's right. Absolutely. I saw the meme. But what the real challenge is that they're so bombarded with so much information, they don't know which one is real, right? They don't know what information is the one that they should listen to. Who is the subject matter expert that they should actually believe? And and I'm not going to go down a path about schools and things like that, but schools don't really teach critical thinking anymore.
Yeah.
They teach test taking and they teach information gathering, but they don't think critical thinking or teach critical thinking. They don't teach rhetoric. They don't teach logical thinking. And so people have lost these skills in many ways. And so they are looking for somebody who can do the heavy lifting for them, and at the same time who is honest and believable and all of those things, so that they can say, you know what, I think I like this person better than the other one. I'll at least go down the path further and see.
Right. So your website, boldapproach.com, what does that mean when you say bold? Because most entrepreneurs, again, most Americans, we're not taught to be bold,
Right.
Be polite, say yes, sir,
Right.
no, sir. Don't toot your own horn, blah, blah, blah. But now here's this business owner, here's this salesperson with tough competition. How do they become bold, and what does that really mean?
What it means to be bold is simply to speak your truth and to not back away from it, whatever your truth is, right? And it's to get up there and be the same person all the time. It's not to do what everybody else is doing. It's to go in the places that they won't. It's to look for the niches that other people are not looking for and serving the unserved. And it's the willingness to stand up and do the things that other people won't do, right? There's all kinds of salespeople who go through life just trying to call on the same people. And then there's 2 or 3 people that seem to get the business every time, but they do something different. And it's that willingness to be different, right? That willingness to make sure that people see you, that they know that you stand out. And that can be through the way you write. It can be through the way you talk. It can be through the kinds of things you do. So I'll give you an example, though, of being bold. So I did direct mail for a person who sold garage doors, but he sold garage doors to industrial plants, right? And so they had all these kinds of different big doors, and the average installation for him was around $20,000 or $30,000. And so the other thing that he sold was interior wooden doors that were fireproof, and they had a specific sort of burn rate, so that if something caught on fire, that the door would actually hold for a long period of time. And they had to have them in certain plants to be that way. And some of these doors were only 3 feet tall. So what we did is, everybody sent direct mail. Everybody sent their salespeople out. So what we did is we took a direct mail letter that we thought was really great, and we took one of these doors that was only 3 feet tall, and we figured out, we called the post office and figured out what is the largest piece of direct mail we could send, how much can it weigh, how big can it be, found those dimensions, and that's exactly what we did. We wrote the letter on the door, and we mailed the door. Well, guess what? That's going to get talked about. Everybody in the organization, from the person in the mailroom who hates you to the CEO who wonders why his salespeople can't be that creative, are going to talk about you. And did it increase our close rate? It absolutely did. Did it increase our opportunities for appointments? It absolutely did. Did it do it that much better than everything else? Well, maybe about 10 or 15% better. But when you're a $30,000 average installation, 10 or 15% is a lot. Those extra 4, 5, 10, 15 appointments that you get, and it cost him, to send that thing out. It cost him about $50.
But Dave, I'm an orthodontist. I can't mail braces. I'm a financial advisor. I can't mail stocks and bonds. I'm a realtor. I can't mail an entire house. I sell cars. I can't mail them a steering wheel.
Yeah, let me tell you another one that we did for realtors. Realtors are a really great example. That's, and I'll tell you this, and I'm going to tell you right now, there's less than 5 people in America doing it today. And the ones that are people who actually got the idea from me and leveraged it, and they were clients of mine. So, the big thing about moving, especially, most people, when they move, they're moving from one neighborhood to another. They're not moving down the street. So oftentimes that means that they do have to change their orthodontist, that they do have to change their, person who does their tires. They've got to find a new doctor. They've got to find a new school for their kids. Sometimes they're going to change churches, all those kinds of things, right? So when they do that, here's what I said. I said, listen, if you want to sell more houses in these neighborhoods, here's what you do. You go to the dentist, you go to the doctor, you go to the spa, and you go to 4 or 5 other people like that in this neighborhood. right? Where these people don't know anyone, where they don't have a relationship with a business. And you tell these people, listen, it's going to cost you $300 a week. But for that $300, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring at least 10 new people every Friday and Saturday to your office who are going to be moving into this neighborhood so that you can meet them personally and you can introduce yourself and your business to them. So if you're the orthodontist, you're going to shake their hand. You're going to say, hey, look, I'm the orthodontist. This is what you need to know. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to help you. And I'll send you something after you get in the neighborhood. But more importantly, come by and let me know that you moved in so I can say hi again, right? So then what the realtor does is they rent a limo and they get this, 6 or 8 people who are looking for similar kind of a house in a similar neighborhood. They find the 10 houses in that neighborhood that fit the needs of all of these people, or maybe better yet, they find 5. And they get the limo, they pick them up in a limo, they take them around, they show them the houses, right? Then they take them at the end to each one of these businesses, introduce a business, and the place they end up at the end is a restaurant in the neighborhood where they have dinner, lunch, whatever. But here's the thing that happens. Now, when 5 of us go in and see this, 5 couples go in and see these houses, right? And the first
taking
one,
5 couples simultaneously?
absolutely,
Okay.
for a reason.
Yep.
Because we want to be able to show value for the people who are paying for this, but also for another reason, and this is a persuasive reason, right? We're creating some pressure, creating buying pressure. First people go in the house, 2 couples. Oh, I love that house. That's a really great house. They get back in the car and they start talking about it, right? They're in the limo and everybody's talking. They're having a little champagne, but man, I really like that first house. And they go to the second one. I don't like that as much. And then the third person chimes in and goes, wow, I think I like the first one better than the second one. Now 3 people want this house. And they're all starting to feel pressure, buying pressure around I got to get something. I need to do something. That house will be gone. There's 5 people that I can see now. These aren't people who have been walking around, who have, driven by. These are 5 people in a car with me. And I know one of these SOBs are going to go put an offer on the house that I want. I better get on it. So before I get out of the car, I tell the realtor, hey, look, I want to put an offer on that house, right? Pressure is high, but you've also shown them the things that they want because they've pre-selected, pre-identified. You know what kind of things that you're showing them. You're not taking them to houses that they're probably not going to like. What you're doing is creating a buying environment. You're creating a little bit of buying pressure. And you're also doing the most important thing you can, which is introducing them to the neighborhood so they can see, who should I know? Who are the people here that I like? What are the restaurants like? What are the orthodontists like? What are the spas like? All of those kinds of things. You've created this opportunity for them that is unbelievable. But is that bold? Absolutely it is, because I guarantee you nobody else in the neighborhood, in your business, is doing that, right? You've set yourself apart dramatically. And that's a bold move. Does it take some cojones to do it? Yes, because you're going to make an investment in yourself. And you're going to have to go out and do this. You're going to have to sell people on the idea first that they should pay you $300 a week to bring these people by their office, because they're spending more than that trying to send out direct mail that doesn't work and, showing the toast or the bad tooth that they pulled out of somebody's head on social media.
You tell me this story, like I'm thinking back, it's like I've never seen anybody, like even kind of playing on that. I mean, how come my hairdresser never goes and hangs out at an open house?
Right.
Or a bug guy. I mean, the realtor may let them come for free just so they have company, but then again, they say, hey, I got an open house. You can be the premier guy. How about $100? You can hang out at my open house for 4 hours. You can meet everybody that comes in. I mean, it could be a little mini chamber of commerce event, right? But I've never seen even that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How come the local babysitting service doesn't set up there and watch the kids while the parents look around the house?
Yeah.
I mean, there's 1,000 examples of that. But see, that's creative thinking, but it's also being bold, because you're doing things that nobody else is going to do.
Right.
And you know what everybody's going to say? Well, that takes too much time. It's too much effort.
Right.
I don't think it'll work. Whatever.
Yep.
Invite me to your town. I'll kick your ass.
Yeah, it takes too much time. Oh, there's a Facebook update. Blah, blah, blah.
Right,
oh,
exactly.
I got the hockey games on tonight. I got to make plans for the party. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
It's way too expensive. I need to go to Morton's tonight.
Yeah. That's amazing. I think we'll end it on that, because I love that you redefine, I think, in most minds what bold is. Bold is not taking off your shirt and doing a podcast without your shirt. It's, it's doing things that make an impact, but they're not They don't have to get a blimp. They don't have to do something totally crazy. They just got to use their brains.
Not unless it actually supports what their market is, right? If you could, if your market is getting people way out of their comfort zones and getting them to do things they'd never imagined they could do before, maybe doing a nude podcast makes sense.
Right.
Or maybe jumping out of a blimp makes sense. But if you're trying to sell a house, what's the purpose, really? I mean, it's just like, and not to pick on anybody, but, and having your picture on a business card is great. But having a glamour shot done, that's overdone. Everybody's got them. Everybody's got them. Right, exactly. They all look the same. Right, exactly. Yep.
Cheeks in.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Make my duckbill face. Right, exactly.
Oh, wait, that was my bad side. I got to do my left.
Exactly. And, so do something different that's going to get people's attention. Right. And, probably what it is not giving them a business card because, I mean, seriously, I'm just reaching out. This is the stack of business cards that I have right now that I've gotten the last week. Right. That I am going to do absolutely nothing with until I sweep them all into the trash can because I'm sick of looking at them. And so the reality of it is that's not how people really communicate anymore. If you want my number, I'll text it to you. Right. And that's how you're going to get my number. Right. And I'm going to follow up with you so you don't even have to worry about it.
Right. Yeah, and I always tell people that, my goal when I go out is to get cards, right? Get contacts. I don't want to give my card out. Mm-hmm. I want to grab their info, and then I'm going to look them up on LinkedIn. I'm going to look them up on Twitter. Right. I'm going to look them up on YouTube. I want to see where they are, what they do.
Right. And then you put them in a mailing list in Infusionsoft, and you get them going.
Exactly. Right. I was just talking with somebody. I mean, recently I was the weekend, so it was Saturday of Memorial Day, went wine tasting with a group of people, a bunch of military academy grads. I'm in this group in Orange County, but I live out in wine country. So they came out 10 minutes from my house. So, I meet them. So a bunch of people I haven't really met before because I don't go to that thing often enough. It's an hour and a half away. And now I realize I should probably go more often. Because we're hanging out, and I'm talking to the president of a major corporation, right? And we're just hanging out, drinking wine. Wives are talking, everybody, and the guy's like, yeah, I've just been brought on. I am changing everything. I need a sales trainer for a 3-day, thing. And I'm like,
exactly.
So this guy wants to talk. Yeah. He told me I am buying. We know each other personally, and it took a week to reach him, and I only reached him through LinkedIn.
Right. Did you go to the Air Force Academy?
Yep.
Yeah. So, when you start looking back at things like that, fraternities, the Air Force Academy, even being in the military generally, you've got these massive networks of shared experience and people who will take your call just because. Right. Just because. And, I've got a buddy that went to West Point, and, the people he knows and the people that ring opens the door for is amazing. Oh, yeah. And you're right. They're the biggest corporations in America. But people, we tend to forget about the things that are most common to us, right? Yeah, I did that 20 years ago. It's not, it's not who I am today. But it's a part of who you are. And it's also a connection that you can leverage to get into some more business. You've got to leverage all your connections, not just the ones that you want. Yeah, and I mean, just this weekend, too, I reached out to an internet famous individual. And I made mention of a little kind of funny spoof thing she did on YouTube. She's big on YouTube. And I mentioned it and made a little funny related to it. I got a response back from her in about 30 minutes. Right. I'm getting her scheduled for the podcast. And we had no common ground, but I made mention. I took the time to look her up and research her. Right. And it took 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So, it's not like a 3-month ordeal. Right. But just taking that extra time and making that connection, that alone, even if you don't have that fraternity or whatever, just showing respect that you research them, people usually respond. Exactly. Well, I know you want to wrap this up, so let me ask you one quick question before I go. Hey, this is my... what? Okay, fine. Who can I help you connect with that you want on the podcast? Oh, man. Do we record this part, It's up to you. You can cut it out if you want to. But here's the thing. Let me make just a little bit of a lesson with this, right? Okay. So it's not, when's the best time to ask for a referral? When somebody's happy. Right, when they're happy, right after they purchase something, right?
Yeah.
So that's the best time. When's the best time to ask for somebody to help you get somebody that you want? Right after you've interviewed me, right?
Sure.
So that's a great time to do it. It's also a great time for me to offer.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Now, what most people will do is they'll ask for a referral right after they've closed some business. And what is the universal response to, hey, do you know anybody else who might like this?
Oh, wow. No, I mean, nobody really springs to mind right now.
Let me think about it. I'll get back with you, though. Right? And so nobody pushes beyond that. What I say is, oh, come on. Seriously, you don't know one other person? Are you that really in a cave that you don't know anybody else in your industry that might be able to use me? And that's being a little bold and a little ballsy, right?
Yep.
And you know what? About 50, 60% of the people will say, you know what, Dave, you're pushing too hard.
Yep.
Don't be a jerk. And I'll say, you know what? You wouldn't respect me if I didn't go a little bit further, right? I got your attention for a reason. No worries. Let me know if you think of someone.
Yep.
What the other 40, 50% of the people say? Oh, yeah, you're right. I do know Bob.
Right.
Let me get you his info. But then I do the other thing, though, that no one else does. So right after the sale is made, after we, from this reference that you gave me, after we've made this sale, I sit down, I say, you know what, let's do something really quick. Let's thank the person who really, really made this happen. It wasn't you or it wasn't me. It was Wes. He introduced us. Let's shoot him a quick email right now, or let's call him on the phone together while we're sitting here and tell him thanks for connecting us. Now, you'll never forget me after that. Holy crap, these two people called me and said thank you because I connected them. I'm special.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the time. That's the time to do it. Take the time. Push a little harder. So who do you want? Who can I help connect you to? I know 6 people, and that's all.
Okay, well, just give me their names and job titles and list size.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, yeah, I don't know who you know. I would love to get, quote unquote famous people like Gary Vaynerchuk, somebody like that.
Okay.
And I am learning that I'm trying to keep this as real as possible by bringing real people on, even if they're not famous, because they have a good story to tell. But on the flip side, I need some people with big lists. I need a Gary Vaynerchuk, a Guy Kawasaki, to come on and even for 10 minutes and then tweet out to their list, hey, I just spent 10 minutes with the sales whisperer. That guy rocks. And then you watch your following explode. So it's a combination of internet famous type people, even regular famous people, and other real world people that are not famous but have a good story to tell to the people I want to connect with. I want to help with this podcast.
So I'm going to give you a couple of people, or I'm going to give you one person right off the top I think might be a good interview for you. Her name is Dr. Rachna Jain. It's Rachnajain. She's a PhD psychologist. Pretty fascinating person who can really talk to you about, she'll talk to you about sales online and off. And I think your people will find it very interesting. She has a completely different approach than you or I. And I think that would be good for you. And then let me put together a couple of other people who I think might be good fits for you and make that connection.
I hope everybody is paying attention because I'm going to keep this in here. I love the way you just did that. So I mentioned your website, right? Boldapproach.com. Is that the best place to find you? Best place to find me. You can just, or you can go to any social media is my name, all one word, Dave Lakhani, DaveLakhani, Facebook.com/Dave Lakhani, Twitter.com/Dave Lakhani, LinkedIn.com/Dave Lakhani. You'll find me. Very nice. And so your books, can they buy them on your website or they just go to Amazon? No, just go to Amazon. Buy them on Amazon. You can get them on Amazon. I think the Persuasion book, it's been selling a ton lately. So last time I looked, it was out for a little bit. They're reprinting them. Nice. But get it now because they'll go fast again. But the rest of them, just get them on Amazon.com, and that's the fastest way to do it. Why do you think, what's happened? Did you do a big promotion or something, or what's? No, I think that honestly, as the economy has changed and as competition has ramped back up, people are now looking for incremental advantages again, and persuasion always shows up there. When people are looking for that way of how can I get that little bit of an incremental advantage, people go back to looking at persuasion. Yeah, cool, man. Very nice. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for having me. All right, man. A lot of fun. Have a great day. All right, take care. Go back and listen to this interview. Some big things in there. He kind of glossed over a lot of times. There's so much information, right? He talks about how your competition is studying persuasion, so you need to as well. Okay, only polarized people buy things. You've got to get them off the fence. People cannot be lukewarm, right? I spit you out, we read in the Bible, for those that are lukewarm. You've got to get people moving one way or the other. All right, at least there's momentum and you can build on it. Like he said, schools don't teach critical thinking, so help your prospects do that. And that's not always easy. It may not come naturally to you. It's why you've got to study this. You've got to work on yourself, okay? He talked about being bold means to speak your truth. And I think with everything going on in the world today, certainly in this country, people are afraid to speak the truth. You just get shouted down, okay? So be bold, speak the truth, be yourself. I always say, the Bible says the truth will set you free, right? But I've always said people know the truth when they hear it. They want to hear it and they gravitate towards it. So be yourself, be bold, speak the truth, be willing to be yourself, help people understand what it is they're looking for, understand the difference between manipulation and persuasion. If you're listening to this, I doubt that you are a manipulator, right? But you do need to know how to persuade, how to convince, how to get your point across, how to help the prospect make their own decision. I've always said you've got to be comfortable being in the presence of uncomfortable people. You have to be comfortable making people uncomfortable by asking tough questions that make them think. You have to get to the truth, and usually it's 3 or 4 levels deep. You have to ask, why is that important? Why is that important over and over again until the prospect finally realizes that they need your help. Show feedback and guest suggestions are always welcome. Let me know what topics you'd like me to cover and any cool guys or gals you'd like me to interview. You can hit me up at wes@thesaleswhisperer.com. And if you want some affordable, live, interactive help from me and my team twice a month, check out marketingautomationnetwork.com. Even if you don't have an email or a CRM tool running yet, there is no other place on earth where you can get direct access to my team and me to answer your questions and record the answers and give you access to those sessions. You'll get access to the entire archive of sessions going back several years. So head on over to marketingautomationnetwork.com and sign up now. Remember to subscribe to the show, write me a review in iTunes, and I will love you long time. And please tell your friends, all right? The best compliment you can give is to share your feedback with a review and telling your friends about the show. And as always, remember to sell different.